Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Red Cloud's webinar featuring Power Metallic Mines PNP on the Venture Exchange. We're delighted today to have with us Terry Lynch, the CEO of Power Metallic, along with Joe Campbell, VP Exploration, and Duncan Roy, the VP of Investor Relations, who are going to provide us with an update on the exciting work that they're doing in north central Quebec at the Nisk property. My name is Ron Stewart. I'll be your host this afternoon for this webinar. As we work through, if you wish to ask a question, simply post it into the chat box on the side of the screen and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. During today's webinar, the company will be making some forward-looking statements, and we urge you to take a look at the disclaimer that they have on page 2 of their investor deck, which you can find on their website at www.powermetallic.com. Similarly, with respect to Red Cloud, our webinar is for information purposes only. It is not a solicitation to buy or sell securities. Rather, it's for information purposes. So if you're considering an investment either to buy or sell, we suggest that you talk to your investment professional about the opportunity. Finally, you can find our research on our website at www.redcloudsecurities.com, which will include our recent research on Power Metallic together with our disclaimers. With that, I'm going to pass the webinar over to Terry. Take it away, Terry.
Thanks very much, Ron. Appreciate the introduction. It's always a pleasure to get back on Red Cloud and give our audience and our shareholders an update on the exciting developments at Power Metallic. So we'll walk you through. I think it's been a while since we've sort of done a full deck review, so we'll walk you through the deck in a fairly speedy way, and then afterwards we can talk about some of the more current developments. That we announced the last of our winter releases. Last Thursday, had the 12.5 meters of 11%, which is exciting. And then, of course, we announced just recently the lift acquisition, which almost quadruples the land package up there. So exciting details we'll get into a little bit in the presentation, but we'll also cover it in the Q&A afterwards. So without further ado, let's get through the show here. As Ron mentioned, this is a natural disclaimer. Do your own due diligence. It's always a good practice, and we recommend that be followed. This is, one of the great things about our company is that we've been able to attract a lot of smart mining investors, some of the smartest in the world, really. Global leaders like Robert Friedland, Rob McEwen, and Gina Reinhardt, not just once, but multiple times, and then a number of mining funds. So we feel really fortunate that we've been able to do that. That's obviously fully funded the company. The reason why we got fully funded is, of course, this great discovery called Nisk in the Lion Zone, and we'll talk to you about that in detail. As a result of being, fully funded, we've got an active 100,000 meter program going on now. Drills turning, and we'll be ramping up our additional drills as we roll through the summer, and ultimately we'll peak out at about six drills on site at the same time. We've had to scale the site operations to be able to handle that much core and that much activity, but that's well advanced now, and we're moving forward in a big way. And then we're doing everything in a very sustainable way at Power Metallic. We offset all of our drilling exposure on the CO2 side of things. We've got a very holistic approach to making what we think will be the world's first carbon neutral polymetallic mine, and we're doing it probably in the best place to make a critical mineral discovery in Quebec. We'll talk to you more about that. Here's a little snapshot of the company. About, I guess right now, about 230 million shares out, and about 265 or so fully diluted. The thing you'll notice, the one big takeaway we see is that about half of our company is owned by the top 7-8 holders, and all these 7-8 holders have put in significant money over the last 2 years. Probably the Lynch family has probably been the biggest investor over the last 2 years. I guess now Rob Friedland's topped me, but very significant sums, and I think that's a good sign. I'm a big believer. I'm an investor first and foremost. I'm not mining geologist or engineer. I'm an investor, and I always like to see management put their skin in the game, because then they're really believers. And the fact that they're doing it repetitively over a period of time, this should give you confidence that this is a good situation. So we talked briefly about where we're at in Quebec. Quebec is arguably the best critical mineral jurisdiction in the world. It's inside Canada, which is a phenomenal country to work with inside of the mining space. There's three big reasons to like Quebec. Number one is the infrastructure is amazing. So in our case, we're located about a little less than halfway up the province, just south and east of James Bay. You can get to it off Route North. That's a major highway. It's 4 lanes in a lot of cases, and right by us, it's 3 lanes. So you can drive right to the site, right to the drill rigs. Across the road from us is a Hydro-Quebec substation. So power and roads already there. We're about 8 kilometers outside the town of Nemaska. It's got a regional airport, has accommodation and food for our staff. It's also the home of the James Bay Cree, and that's reason number 2 why Quebec is great. Is Quebec's done an amazing job working with the First Nations, making them true partners in our mining projects, and so they're very pro-mining. And as evidenced by within the James Bay Cree area, they've got I guess 1 mine's built, Nemaska, 2 more in their final permitting stage. The permits have been approved, so it's a very pro-mining area, and that's really great. Third reason why we love Quebec is the financial terms in Quebec are literally the best in the world. So, for example, in this last round, when we raised $50 million, it was raised at an overall average price of $2.50 a share, and the investors bought in at $1.45. So it basically, almost 1.7, I guess, times, and including 20% hard. So it was almost 2 times on the flow, and so you get just a tremendous kicker, a lot less dilution. So it's really been amazing for us. So flow through is almost 2 for 1. And then if you think about building a mine here, the same sort of economics are involved. If it costs, say $400 million to build this thing, $200 million would come in the form of tax credits, a little bit more than that you can turn to cash. So it's truly an amazing spot to make a discovery. What have we discovered? Well, we discovered a boatload of copper and a boatload of nickel, and a lot of PGEs and gold and silver. So all this is material that we're going to need to power the energy of the future. And it's not, people get obsessed with are EVs in or are they out? And really that's just part of it, the EV sector. We believe that, I always say, I never bought into that half the cars were going to be EVs in 5 years. I always thought, but I do believe there'll be double the number of EVs on the road in 5 years. That'll take more copper, more nickel. But if you look at AI 5 years ago, we weren't even talking about it, and now it's going to take 10% of the world's power. So and it's growing. So the basically 2 things that you should look for as an investor is if you think population growth is going to continue and energy consumption per unit of population is going to continue, then you want to be in base metals because that's what's needed to sort of provide it. So there's going to be a lot of growth in this area, and it's taken so long to permit and build mines that in both nickel and copper, in the very short term, there's going to be some serious supply shortages, which is already starting to come through in the commodity pricing. This is giving you some perspective of the size we might ultimately find at Nisk. So right now, the posted resource we've got is 7.1 million tons. Analysts have in January talked about a 9.5 million ton forecast for what we had at Lion in January. It's grown since then, we think. Here are some other comparables that we're talking about. Sakatti, which is 40 million tons. They've actually just updated theirs, and we need to update this slide. They're now up to 100 million tons. Voisey's Bay, 140 million tons. We've always said internally we think at a minimum we're going to get to Sakatti size, and we think Voisey's Bay is a stretch, but it's certainly not beyond the realm of the possible. So there's a lot of growth to happen here, and we'll walk you in why we think that can happen. So here's the land package as it was, just a week ago, where we had 46 square kilometers. We've since added this big lift package, which we'll talk about in a second. But the discovery happened because we were pursuing, our nickel exploration, which we had acquired from Critical Elements, and at 3.1 million tons, 1.5% nickel. We grew it to 7.1. There's probably sort of north of 8 there now. And we had lots of nickel targets that could have grown that. And the reason why we stepped out 5.5 kilometers to the west and made the line zone discovery was sort of it's funny. I mean, we basically, the average hole at Nisk was about 400 meters, and we basically had some drilling success, and so we had an odd number left. We had 200 meters left, and Joe and the team came to me and said, "Hey Terry, do you want to throw another 60,000 in and finish off this next hole at Nisk?" And I didn't want to do it directly because the way we were putting money in, I was putting up $500,000. My friends, and peers were putting up $500,000, and then we were doing the 2-for-1, and we're getting $2 million in exploration funding. So, you always have more money versus less when you're in mining. So I said, let's, what do we have for, 200 meters that makes sense? And the team said, look, we've always liked this target that's 5.5 kilometers to the northeast. It's, it's ultramafic at surface. It's got an EM anomaly. That's what Nisk was found on. We think it's probably another, nickel, like string of pearls thing. And, we ended up drilling it. And of course, as the gods would have it, we found the line zone. So, you're better to be lucky than good in this business. And, the gods have truly blessed us with an amazing discovery here. You can see on the screen, here's, 5 of our holes sort of spread across 21 meters of almost 8% copper. And, that's all done with, copper equivalent using $950 PGEs. And PGEs is giving you a little heads up there. That's a sector to be watching. That's going north. So this thing is very rich, and it's got legs. This was the land package we just announced. You can see our area in black here. That's I guess that's I'm doing it where So you can see the area shaded in black. The blocked area is the area that we acquired from Nisk. We've done a lot of regional work and looking at the thing, and we are truly believe from a science perspective that while we have some exciting mineralized discoveries in Lion and the deposit in Nisk, and we've got lots of room to grow that on our own ground, we think there could be more of these. We think this is likely to become more of a district play than just a individual play. And so the opportunity came up to work with the fine people at LIFT to acquire their ground, and it made sense for both companies. Honestly, for them to start from scratch and looking would have been difficult and expensive and risky. Much better for them to take the stock and take the package and grow with us. So we were able to put that together, which is a great benefit. They had done some great initial scientific work that we were able to blend in. So we're looking forward to the guys are on the ground working at that now, and we're looking forward to ramping that up this summer. When we raised the $50 million at the end of February, the reasons why we were able to raise it were these next two slides. So basically, we were able to walk people through where our market cap is relative to what we've found and what we're likely to find, and people could see that if you're at 16, that's 7.1, but then there's that arm waving of the analyst saying we're 10 million tons or thereabouts or maybe more. So all of a sudden you start to see us getting very close to what these people have already discovered, and then we're doing it with half the tonnage, so double the grade. Adriatic, I think, has just been taken out or on the verge of a takeout for I think it's 900 million US. Very similar grade in terms of value of the rock. So I think we sort of said when we were on the road, we felt we were being valued at sort of 20 to 30 cents on the dollar, and that's why it was a great time to be getting into power metallic. And I think that resonated with people. That particularly resonated, and this other point resonated because while we're obviously believe that we're trading at a fundamental discount to our value that we've already discovered, I think there's a reason to believe we're going to find a lot more. And I think that's what keeps everyone excited. And now that we've added this additional land, I think it's even more confident that we should believe this. So this slide here is a creation of our board member, Steve Beresford. And Steve's probably, I don't know if he's the top guy in the polymetallic exploration, but he's certainly in that conversation. He's had more experience in it than almost anybody on the planet. He was formerly chief geo at First Quantum, and then at MMG and IGO, and all very successful, multi-billion-dollar mining enterprises. So Steve spent a lot of money exploring for these exact type of deposits. They're called orthomagmatic nickel copper PGE deposits. And this triangle here is Steve's creation. And the PGEs, he adds the gold and silver in there, and he calls it the noble metals. And we would expect probably with our discovery that will probably be almost 33% revenue in copper, 33% in nickel, and 33% in noble metals. So a nice mix. And you'll see on the screen here, these are all the various orthomagmatic discoveries around the world. There's about 20 of them or so. And they're all, interesting enough, either major or super major. So 1 million tons of contained metal or over 10 million tons of contained metal. So you can see where Lion is relative to Sakatti and Oktyabrsky. So Oktyabrsky is the deeper part of Norilsk, and it's Norilsk is the granddaddy of them all. It literally is the world's greatest mine, the only mine in the history of the world that's got over $1 trillion worth of metal in the ground or produced. And I think it's about $1.4 trillion. 90% of it is in 1 square kilometer at Oktyabrsky. So you can imagine it's pretty staggering to think of that. It'd be so easy to miss 1 square kilometer in exploration. And they found this mammoth project. But Lion is as great, as good, or better than Norilsk, obviously, but we don't have a square kilometer yet. We got 20 meters in areas, and it's supposed to hopefully spread across a few more kilometers. But I mean, it's an amazing sort of piece of work. Now, if you looked at all these orthomagmatic discoveries, and on average, for every 1 ton of copper sulfide that's discovered, 5 tons of nickel sulfide is discovered. It ranges between 2 to 7. Right now at Nisk, we're probably 1.5 to 1 copper to nickel, soon to be 2 to 1 copper to nickel. What does that mean? Well, it means we're discovering more copper, which is great, and we think we're going to discover more. But it also means there's probably a lot more nickel to be discovered as well. So you can see very quickly if we're at 10 million tons of copper, arm waving, and it's going to 20 or 30, and now you apply a 5 factor to the nickel on that. That's how you get to Voisey's Bay style. So it's not like we're not smoking crack. This is definitely a possible, and we think it's possibly even a probable that we're going to get some very, very serious size here. Now, Mother Nature's tricky. She can always fool you, and this may be the one that breaks the math on this. But we think there's some very considerable upside in the growth in this. I think that resonated with investors, and that's one of the reasons why they invested. In mining, you got to have rocks, and you got to have guys that can find them and guys that can finance them. So we've developed a really great team. We're very proud of all these people. Peter Kent's our chairman. He's done a great job sort of guiding the board. Greg McKinsey's ex-investment banker, runs a silver mining company, so he's got a lot of great experience to bring to the board as well. Les Mallard, a very big, significant investor in the company, and an experienced businessman. Obviously, we got Duncan on the call whenever people can't get hold of me. Duncan's probably a better storyteller on the project than I am. And then on the science side, we've got Joe and Steve. So Joe obviously came out of GeoVector, which is our lead partner on the execution side. So Joe and Adam run GeoVector and his team, and it's top 2 or 3 geological consulting firm in the country, and so it's given us amazing depth. So we can hit the ground running, and it's been a great business deal for us. It's interesting enough that we're able to pay them X, and get full credit on the X. If they were internally hired and they were just employees for Power Metallic, we'd only get 70% credit. So it's actually even been efficient for us to do this, and it's allowed us to scale. And then the other interesting point I would make is that both Joe and Steve came out of Western Mining. So Western Mining is one of the iconic mining firms in the history of mining, sort of like on level with Inco. And so it's Australian-based initially, of course, and eventually got gobbled up at BHP. So they had a very specific approach to exploration and data recovery and approach to mining. And so when Steve first came as a consultant over and started to look at the project, he was very impressed with how the package was put together. He said it's the first time he's ever come to a place where everything was done the way he wanted it. So that's as a result of their training, and so it's been great to work with world-class thought leaders in this space and be able to drive forward. Jimena's another great leader for us. We'll talk to you about the spin-out and what we're doing there shortly, but she's running our Chile operations. So obviously, well-funded. We got the $50 million in. We made a good good call on the timing there. Got very fortunate to get our 50 million in the till before the Trump shenanigans started, and so we're well capitalized. We're basically funded, no expectation to do anything until sometime in 2026, and we're certainly funded through the end of this 100,000 meter program. The exploration and drilling ongoing. We're going to talk a bit about this more in the Q&A. Our land package has changed, obviously, and now we've got some more areas surrounding this. Gives us more flexibility, but we've done a lot of science on the gravity and EM, and the borehole EM has been a very important guiding tool for us, and has allowed us to maintain a 50% drill success. So that's something that's you dream about in mining, but it's because of the technology and the way the plate has worked here. There's no graphite or chrome to give us false positives, so we've been able to find the plates and drill them, and then make discoveries from there. Metallurgy is often a question in the polymetallics. A lot of concern that maybe you won't be able to get the other metals out in payables, and that's usually with low grade PGEs. We're very high grade, and so our initial work on this is very promising. We're going to get some more results out, we hope, soon on that, and ultimately we'll have a full met study that we'll bring out to the market. But from obviously from an origin perspective, Sudbury is quite different than Nisk. But from a style perspective, this is very much like a Sudbury footwall deposits. So there was a lot of high grade copper and PGEs there, and they were produced very nicely. So we're expecting more of the same. When I talked to Robert Friedland about this before he made his initial investment, I said, "What do you think on the met studies and metallurgical recoveries?" He said, "Look, at Platte Reef, his fine project in South Africa, he's getting high 80s, low 90s. He says, I'm sure you're going to get there." So we're carrying right now about 80%. So that's interesting. So we think there's room for positive re-rating based upon some success on the metallurgical side. It speaks to another point is we get often asked when we're going to do a 43-101 on the line zone. And the answer on that is probably in H2 of next year. When things are growing as quickly as they are for us, you don't want to cap them off by locking yourself into a 43-101 number too early. This thing is going to scale over the next 12 to 18 months. We want to capture a lot of that so that can be reflected in the market. But what we are doing is we are posting full drill collars, azimuths, and the assays. So the analysts can come up with their own number, whether you're a research analyst like the folks at Red Cloud or Hanam Partners or Roth and the others that are covering us, Fundamental. Or if you're just somebody who's excellent with Leapfrog and you want to sort of see if we're full of BS or not, well, take the data, put it into your Leapfrog, and you'll see how exciting this project really is. Couple of other things that we will speak to coming up soon. Obviously, when we were in nickel discovery, we were focused on how do you make the most out of nickel. Nickel, we used to be called Power Nickel, and we had a nickel focus. And obviously, nickel will still be a big part of the story. Steve tells us the best way to visualize this deposit is to think it is a nickel deposit, and think of the palm of your hand. Your palm is the nickel sulfide, and the fingers are the lion zones and the tiger zones and these other zones we expect to find. And that's somehow over time the nickel sulfide was interacted with some hydrothermal action, brought this sulfides, the copper sulfides, to the surface, and they dissipate in these narrow chutes, and it creates these very highly charged, high-grade projects. So that's sort of the secret to success in polymetallic exploration. But at the base of it is still the nickel. And obviously, we think, Steve tells us that, to get the high grades that we've got, he just does not feel that Nisk, where we have 1.25% nickel equivalent at this point, we don't think that that's what generated Lion. The math on this, if you look at the other 20 or so polymetallics, suggests that it would be much higher grade nickel and copper as a base, and the nickel sulfide that did this. So we haven't found that base. We hope to find it over the coming months. We got some ideas where it might be, and we think we're getting close. When we find it, one of the things we'll be doing is, well, how are we going to produce it? What are we going to do with it? So this is where CVMR comes in. CVMR is the largest private nickel refiner in the world. They basically make nickel powder and nickel shapes. And they have partnerships with the Department of Defense in the United States. The US $100 bill is printed using their nickel nanopowder. So these guys are very connected. Their customer list looks like the Fortune 100. All the big defense contractors, Raytheon, McEwen, Boeing, etc. So it's pretty impressive group, very, very well heeled. And they sell the nickel powder for between $40,000 to $60,000 a ton. Nickel concentrate, on the other hand, is about $15,700. Takes about $4,000 more in additional spend to get to the powder. Problem is, only a few people in the world know how to do this, and they're one of them. So this is what the JV is all about, is potentially they're evaluating this. We're going to have a feasibility study out in H2, and there's some interesting developments on that front, and we'll look forward to bringing you that in the near future. One of the things we're most proud of is we believe fully that we'll be able to make this a carbon neutral mine. A lot of it's luck. I mean, we're happen to be beside Hydro-Quebec, so we can, green hydropower could power this thing. The other thing that's lucky is it's on ultramafic rock, and ultramafic rock is great at sequestering CO2. Some of the other stuff is choice, how you might process it. There's 3 ways to make nickel. You can do hydrometallurgy, you can use smelting, or you can use chemical metal vapor process. That's what CVMR uses. That's the lowest impact CO2 in the planet. Has no external air, no external water. So there's some interesting ways for us to get carbon neutral on this, and we think that's going to help us in a couple of key ways. It may help in price on the nickel, and it may help for sure. It's going to definitely get us better offtake partners. We've had several conversations on offtake, nothing imminent to talk about, but for sure everyone's impressed with the carbon neutral approach. We did do the spinoff in February this year. We're actively working on getting that listed. We hope to get it listed by the end of June. I was just talking to the lawyers in Vancouver yesterday. That's lagged a little bit now. We're still trying to get there, but I'm expecting it to be more like mid-July. So sometime in July, I expect this to be listed. And then I think once it's listed, we'll have some ongoing business news there that I think will be exciting for our community. So let's just wrap it up before we get to questions. So obviously, we're ramping up exploration. We're 2 rigs rolling now, going to 2 more rigs by the end of the month, or maybe mid-July. And then ultimately another 2, I guess, in September. So ultimately 6 rigs rolling, probably by the time we get back from Moose Break. And that'll roll until Christmas. So we'll probably this year, balance of the year, put out something in the neighborhood of 40,000 meters is my guess. We expect this is going to lead to a rapid resource expansion, even if it is at this point done notionally based upon us providing the data and the analysts, much like Philo and Great Bear did. We've obviously added to the land package. You saw the lift announcement this week. We think that's a compelling announcement. Really gives us a lot more flexibility, and we think there'll be some interesting developments there. Ultimately, we're evaluating moving to more senior exchanges, both here in Canada and also in the United States, looking at the New York, probably for the fall. We're expecting to get this MET study out. We'll have some commentary on MET possibly sooner than later, because we think that's an important part. While we're not giving people those 43 101s, we're giving them the raw data. We will try and get a MET study out as quickly as possible, so people aren't guessing about recoverabilities. They'll actually be proved out. We think we've got some interesting action happening in our spinoff that's going to create fundamental value for us at Power Metallic. The feasibility study, again, will add to that in terms of what's happening with CVMR. And then finally, we're always looking for ways to grow the company, and we'll have some interesting opportunities that we'll discuss shortly on that. So that's pretty much it from the pitch deck. So I'm going to go back to Ron and see if he's got some questions from the audience, and that'll bring in Duncan and Joe and whoever is best equipped to answer the questions that the audience has generated. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. That was really quite interesting. I've got a few questions myself that I'll start. Sorry?
Yeah, go for it.
I've got a few questions myself that I'd start with. In terms of access onto the property, is there road access there?
Yes, yeah, you drive right off of basically Route North, and then there's some small little highways that you can little roads that you can take right to the rig.
And how large is the town of Nemaska?
I think it's like 1,200 people or so, something in that range, and it has grocery stores and accommodation, for a guy so they can get fed and sleep and stuff like that, and gas stations and everything.
So
you
there
need.
is a workforce there and whatnot. An ultimate operation would be based out of Nemaska, correct?
Yeah, for sure. The mine would be based there. We'd definitely draw as much as we could. We've always committed wherever we can hire our partners, the First Nation, and because that's what they want. They want high-paying jobs for the people, and that's what we want to deliver. The other source would be, of course, Chibougamau, which is about 2 hours, 2:20 or so, south of us. Big mining population there, of course, and Metagami as well. So there's a lot of this is northern Quebec, a lot of experienced people.
Have you had any problems with the fires in the recent years?
We never we got shut down because people had to go and fight the fires, and the travel at the time was hard to bring people in and out. But we actually never experienced any real serious issue at the site. So that it wasn't a problem for us in that respect, but it did impact us, and it cost us about a month or 6 weeks, the peak year.
Do you have any more information on when the spin-out will be completed? You said that July.
So the spin-out is complete. I mean, it is legally a separate company. It's called Chilean Metals Inc. So people will have got their stock on that, and that part's done. What we're now talking about is the final stage of listing it. So we did it initially private, even though it's a public company. We didn't list it right away to sort of freeze the shorts and be troublesome to those guys, and that was somewhat impactful. And then now we're going to list it on the TSXV, and the listing application is in, and it's the 43101's been approved, and the everything is sort of approved, other than they just have to go through their checks and the new management team, the new board, etc., to sign that off.
Now, in respect to the 100,000 meters that you've got planned, that's going to take you well into 26, isn't it?
Yep, we expect that would take us through 26.
And the focus on work, do you have a plan as to where you're focusing most of the drilling in the near term? And
yeah, I'm going to go back to a slide, and then I'm going to pass over to Joe. Just bear with me as I slide back here. Is that the best one, Joe?
Yeah, that's good. So as Terry pointed out, the area that's in the black hatch is the original property. So that contains the Lion, Tiger, and Nisk deposits. So as we're starting up right now, we're drilling the plunge extension on Lion. Obviously, that's a very high priority target for us. So we have drills turning right now, as Terry said, on building that. In addition, on Lion, as Terry mentioned, we are putting together the information that will lead us to a mineral resource estimate. So we need, as we have drilled so far, we've tended to step out quite aggressively. So our spacing on our drill holes is wide, and we want to go back in and do a fair amount of infill drilling. So a second part of the program will be infill drilling on Lion. And then once we sort of get those two parts of the program nailed down, we have to expand Tiger. We know that there's going to be some extension to that zone. If I had a long section in front of you right now, you would see a big white space between Lion and Tiger that has no drilling in it. We need to drill those areas. There's every possibility that there's going to be more deposits in that area. So that's a third area that we will get to as soon as we have a few more drills on site. And as Terry said, we're working towards 4 drills by sometime in June. And then between Lion and Nisk, we've got 5 kilometers of on-drilled area that we just need to start drilling off. And so the objective there is to drill a fence of holes every 300 meters along that trend. That distance is basically reflective of the strike length that we see of the high-grade part of Lion. So we think that if we drill at that spacing, we'll have a much less chance that we're going to have a miss of a deposit. And those holes will also receive borehole EM on them. So the borehole EM will actually give us about a 200-meter radius look of whether there's a conductor in that area. So that area is obviously very high probability that there's going to be more deposits along that zone. In addition, we've picked up a fair amount of ground to the west of Nisk in the lift deal. We know that the prospective geology extends through that area that we picked up. We already had a small block sort of orphaned out to the west that, and now that we've made a connection through that area. And I would like to just say that the reason why these areas were important for us to pick up from lift is these are the edges of the basin that hosts the geology that is hosting all of the deposits that we know to date. So it doesn't mean that there's a absolute that there's going to be deposits in that same stratigraphy, but the probability is quite high. And that's why these areas were chosen as our next exploration stage. So we are right now have groups in the field doing mapping and prospecting along that prospective geology. And we've already had some discoveries of ultramafics along that trend. So we've got the right geology, and we're in the process right now of getting quotes for a regional airborne EM survey that will cover all of this property, and that will give us conductors that will supplement the geological information, which is also on top of a very good geochemical database that Lyft provided to us when we took this property over. So prospectively, there's almost a certainty that we're going to see some more mineralization along those trends. Whether they're going to turn into a Lion juicy deposit, that'll take the exploration over the next year. But we're expecting to have moved the new lift ground to the next level of exploration by the end of this summer. So we should have drill targets by the fall of 2025 to start looking at areas where we might be able to discover more lions and a potentially large nickel deposit.
So, Joe, how deep does your airborne EM see in the ground?
Well, there's a lot of variables that affect how deep it goes. So I'll just give you I asked that question of our geophysicist, Matt Penny, and the surveys that we're looking right now for people to run, it's a very detailed survey. The line spacing is quite tight. The quote we're asking for is for the instrument to be quite close to the ground, so that gives you a better signal. So we should be able to see around 300 meters deep with the airborne survey, and potentially even deeper depending on the quality of the rock that we have to deal with.
And would these sulfide zones show up with gravity?
That's another thing that we have to look at to do. We've done gravity on parts of the property, and we'd like to supplement that with more. Certainly, large sulfide deposits will show up in a gravity survey. So that's another survey type that we will be looking at doing.
What about geochem? What kind of geochem expression would you get over top of these?
Well, there's two things that we would look at as information, and LIFT has provided us with a very comprehensive soil and till survey over their ground, which has great indicator minerals in it. So that's something that we're using right now. By the end of the summer, with our mapping and prospecting, we'll be able to add litho or rock samples to that information to supplement the geochem, the soil. So the soil work is going to act as a vector for us to go in and get some lithogeochem on those areas. And hopefully within a month or so, we're going to have airborne EM conductors to drop on top of that to give us positive drill targets.
Yeah, no, that sounds like the right way to go. It would seem to me that an ultramafic host, if that's indeed what it is, it would be a recessive erosional feature. So you might not get tremendous bedrock exposure of the horizon that you're really looking for. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the one good thing about an ultramafic, though, is it generally has very high magnetic signature. So along with the EM that we're doing, we'll be flying magnetics. And along with those two surveys, we've just put out a proposal to get detailed LiDAR over this property. So to address what you just said, we'll be looking at terrain features to help vector us in to areas that might be the prospective rock type. But we all have to remember that Lion is not in the ultramafic. It's been, as Terry pointed out with his fingers, it's been pushed out of the ultramafic. So we have target areas that are proximal to the ultramafic, but not in the ultramafic.
And Terry was mentioning that the high-grade copper that you've experienced and whatnot is a vector that would suggest that there's a considerably larger nickel source in the region somewhere. Is there a way of looking at these mineralogy from a chemical point of view to try and find a vector of the fluid flow?
That's right. There obviously, if you're looking for nickel and copper, two things you want to have in your geochemistry is nickel and copper. That's kind of the no-brainer side of it. But there are various elements that are vectors to proximity to mineralization that we are using to tell us we should be looking in particular areas because the vector elements are pushing us towards those areas. So the data we got from LIFT and our own data, we do a multi-element analysis. So we've got about 40 to 60 elements that we can look at. And there's a suite of those elements that are used to tell us, hey, you're near sulfide mineralization. So it's not just nickel and copper that we would be looking at.
Okay. So to move a bit away from the highly technical conversation that I find interesting, that's fine. One of our participants is just asking for an update on when you expect to have a new resource calculation.
I mean, basically what we're saying publicly on that is H2 of next year.
Okay.
So
that's fine.
Yeah, there's three steps really to completing an MRE. One is we need to do more infill drilling so that we have a solid drill database. The second is we need to do some mineralogical work, which is in process, and we actually have some results back already that will dictate what is going to be the best recovery method once we get into metallurgy. So those three steps will be carried out in parallel, but it's going to take time to complete them all.
And what's the spacing that you're using for inferred resources? What kind of drill hole spacing do you have?
What we're trying to push for in the next, say, 6 to 9 months would be to get the deposit down to at least 50-meter centers. And we believe that that will give us an indicated deposit rather than an inferred.
Okay, thank you. And we have another comment here that I think we can all share that suggests that the stock is undervalued. I think that's probably true and whatnot. I think we can all agree with that. And Terry, just before we started, the question really is, what are you doing to get more attention on the stock? You were talking about a little bit of the travel that you've been doing. You might want to just refresh everybody.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, we obviously, when we raised the money, we thought at that point we, had the market not got infected with the tariffs and the Trump shenanigans, we probably would have got re-rated then and moved up and broken two and moved on. But obviously, the world happens as it happens, and so it disturbed the universe, and we sort of broke down, and and these things, nothing goes straight up. It always, things move forward and they consolidate and they go again. So my belief is we're on another run, that we've bottomed out here, and that we were quiet from a news perspective for a while. We're back now into sort of our regular flow of things, where we're expecting to have a lot more news out. As a result of the news coming out, we're now, as management, Duncan and I are on the road, getting out, telling the story. Duncan was in Quebec City last week. I was in Vancouver. You're getting to investors. Investors are responsive once you communicate with them what's going on. I mean, and they can see that while you're fully funded, looks like you got some tremendous potential going forward. What are the plans? So it's being well received. We just need to get out and see a lot more people, and that's the plan over the next little while. Generally, summer's quiet, but we've got a lot of news happening right now. We expect to continue to sort of bring the message home. I'm in New York next week, and Toronto now. Then we're off to England and Australia. The last round, half of the money came from Australians. So one of our biggest movers in the market is the Australian investors. They're very bullish on the project, and for good reason, we think. So we'll be back over there with them in mid to late July, and giving them obviously a more fulsome one-to-one. Plus there'll be more news by then, and so I think it's just it's always about getting more investor eyeballs on it. Plus we've been cultivating a number of large institutional followers who move slower, have a more advanced due diligence process, and we respect that. So we're gradually working our way through it, but we're one of the things, the reason why we got 15 billionaires in this deal is I would meet them one by one. Sometimes they tiptoe in, and then we would execute. And we've been an execution company. We say we're going to do something, and we do something. And so when you continue to do that, that's what investors like. And we've been showing that as well with institutions, and we're going to continue to show that. So we expect we'll get some more heavier institutional following. We think we're I suspect very much that we'll be listed stateside in the fall, and that'll be a very big move for us. So we got to get exposed to the world's global markets, because unfortunately Canada's markets have struggled, for all sorts of reasons, which we could talk about. But generally, it's just been the capital hasn't been here. So it's an amazing time to be looking at the stock. It's an amazing time for us to be talking about it, because people are getting in cheaper than the issue price. Good on them. This is an awesome buy the dip opportunity, I think, and because I think once we start ripping, once we start getting these results out, this thing will break out. And we were the top performing mining stock in 2024, and I think we'll be the top performing mining stock in 2025.
That's a great answer, Terry. And I think I'll add to that the PGE market certainly looks like it's moving in the right direction to try and put some wind in your sails as well.
Yeah. People forget, we're probably the second highest grade PGE discovery in the world. So we're going to have millions of ounces of PGEs that that are not 950 an ounce anymore. So, and they're going to go a lot further north, I think. So there's a lot of excitement there to be had. Lots of what I would call asymmetric upside in this deal, and that's what investors like. And I think what's interesting now that the governments are talking about critical minerals and supply chains. You never heard that. I mean, when's the last time any federal leader or the president of the United States talked about mining? I mean, it's been, I can't even think of it in my lifetime. So now they're talking about mining and critical minerals. And so it's going to start to come on down to the talking heads, the Kramers of the world, people like that. And so the generalist right now, probably in mining, the allocation is like 1%. Used to be back in the day when I was a young man, which is too long ago now for me to remember, but it was like 5%. If we ever went back to 5%, there'd be so many 10 baggers in this space, because there's a small number of really great companies that have got great projects that will become mines, and the money will pour into them. So there's going to be one of the things, and I forgot we need to put this back in the slide, Dunk, is that slide that we have where we show the commodity market to the equity market. Right now in history, the equity market and the divergence between the commodity market has never been bigger. And you just know that's going to change. And when it does change, and it's changing now, and the commodity markets come back and the commodity companies come back, it's going to be, you're looking at 3 or 4 bagger for the index. Forget individual companies that are doing it right. So that's why it's an exciting time to be looking in the space. And there's a lot of great companies out there. We think we're one of them, but there's certainly other choices. And I say to people, if you can't stomach investing in a junior miner, and we get that because there's volatility there, although there's arguably volatility everywhere, invest in some of the great mining funds. Palace, Capital, 1832, BT Global, McKinsey. There's some great ones out there, that do a fine job of investing funds in the sector, and you're not going to miss the ride. You don't want to miss this ride. There's a big ride coming in mining, I really believe, and I've pushed all of our family chips in. So we're not talking with out of our hat. We're convicted believers. It's the time to go on mining, and you should really check your sources.
I'll add to that those funds are run by some pretty smart people, as
100%.
I can tell. And just back onto your story with Joe at the helm and 6 drills and a lot of work to do. The news flow is going to be considerable. You've already attracted the likes of a Robert Friedland and some other A-list investors into the story. So I think it'll all happen in the fullness of time. Terry, Joe, Duncan, thank you for your time. I think we'll call it a wrap on that.
Sounds great. Thanks for having us. You have a great day. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
You bet.